All right, welcome back to Heads and Tails with me, Henry Faber. I'm the founder at Oppen Education, and I'm absolutely delighted to be welcoming on Heads and Tails today Olly Newton, who's the director at the Edge Foundation. Edge is an independent, politically impartial foundation working to inspire the education system to give all young people across the UK the knowledge, skills, and the behaviours that they need to flourish in their future life and work. Before his time at Edge, Ollie spent 12 years, I think I'm right in saying, in the Department for Education, and he's also acted as a specialist advisor to the House of Lords Commission on Youth Employment, amongst other things. He is a bit of a guru, as far as I'm concerned, for all things education, the state of play, where we're headed, and I'm thrilled to have you with us, so thank you.
Yeah, it's lovely to be with you.
Thanks, Ollie. So I thought I'd start with, you know where we are. We love mentoring, and we're fascinated by all things mentorship. Did you have a mentor? Do you have a mentor? A little bit of backstory on your experience of mentorship would be great.
Yeah, of course. I think this is so important. I've got four mentees and I've got a mentor as well. It's not a formal relationship, but I definitely consider her that way. Somebody called Robin Goldberg, who is a chief experience officer of a really cool new university over in the States. We met when we were in Scotland and just instantly clicked. She's a really amazing person and the kind of person I go to kind of get advice on those kind of bigger picture issues. She's got this great strategic brain and this ability to kind of zoom out and help me think about not getting into the nitty gritty and the detail, but thinking about kind of the overall strategy and where we should be going.
Do you think that's amazing? Just to say that's by far the most detailed and on point answer I've had in asking anyone about mentorship. We usually get really vague answers and no one actually feels that they can put their finger on it. So that's awesome. Can I ask also, do you think you had an awareness of mentorship as a child growing up, and maybe lead that into telling us a bit about your education experience as a child and through uni?
Yeah, of course. So we had a program at our school which was all around kind of peer support and peer mentoring, which was really valuable to me both as a mentee and then as a mentor. And I feel was one of the reasons why I wanted to kind of get into this space, because it felt like that, in that case, like near peer kind of support, just across like a few years. You know, when you're at that age, that's like a massive gulf. Like the level of maturity between when you're like 13 and when you're 15 or 16 feels like a huge kind of deal. So that played a really important role in kind of, I guess, the pastoral support at the school that I went to. And I think definitely kind of influenced me. So my own background, I got a scholarship to an independent school and was really lucky to do that. The kind of quality of the education there was good, but like super traditional. And we didn't really get a chance to have an outlet for kind of creative and technical stuff, which actually in my life outside work is a really big part of my life. Both of my grandmothers were full-time artists, and I spent a lot of my time doing creative stuff, and that wasn't really something that was brought into school. So that's definitely something that kind of drives me, but also the equality of opportunity. Like I didn't really click with many of the people that I spent time with at school. You know, my parents were both hot metal typesetters. That's what they trained as. So it was like a bit of a different group of people. Not that is always a bad thing. It's good to meet people from different kind of parts of life. But I think it gave me a very early insight into some of the kind of challenges around equity and privilege in the system as well. So I don't regret any of it. I was very lucky, and obviously it helped me to kind of get the grounding that I needed, but it also open my eyes to some of the things that I think we need to change in the system, and that hopefully I'm able to kind of focus on doing now that I'm kind of in the opposite place of helping to steer some of that work.
That's great. So was it obvious, or at what point did it become obvious that education was the sector for you?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been really interested in this. I mentioned the kind of peer mentoring stuff, and then when I was at university, I did a lot of work around like widening access and trying to give young people from families that hadn't really experienced university before the opportunity to get into that. I've also always done a lot of kind of voluntary youth work outside, so things like working in scouting and seeing the kind of the opportunities that can bring to kind of support young people to think about broader skills and develop themselves. So it's always been a passion of mine, really. And when I applied to the civil service, I put down the Department of Education as my first choice, and was really lucky to get it, and spent 12 years in the Department of Education and the Department for Business Innovation and Skills, as it was then, all around the kind of area of education and skills. And it was a great time. I really enjoyed my time there. It gave me a really good grounding in kind of how policy is made. I think one of the reasons that I moved on was that actually the civil service really values kind of generalism and really encourages people to move between different areas. And, if you've done well in education for a few years, maybe go to health or maybe go to prisons. And that works well in some ways. It means that the kind of civil servants are very talented and able to move nimbly between different policy areas, but it doesn't value so much that kind of subject matter expertise. And this is the area that I'm passionate about. So it was time for me to kind of move outside and get a different angle on the same area.
Super inspiring. I love that. The generalist route is straight into the specialism. It's great. I think I'm right in saying that during your time at the DFE, you had a lot to do with apprenticeships and the strategy around apprenticeships. Perhaps you could tell us a bit about what that was like, and how that journey, I suppose, has moved to the position we're in now with apprenticeships and the new focus through UCAS.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I was really lucky to have some of a group of postings all around this area that have helped me to kind of get a real insight. So I worked on 14 to 19 diplomas, which some listeners will remember back in the day, young people not in education, employment or training, and we did the legislation to raise the participation age, and then traineeships and apprenticeships. So you're absolutely right. That was my kind of area for the last 4 years that I was in the department. It was a really great time actually, because apprenticeships were very much in vogue. I mean, they are now as well, but like they were the top of like the kind of PM's agenda when David Cameron was in. There was a lot of interest, a lot of support in them, and that kind of comes with advantages and disadvantages, I guess. You're kind of always in the spotlight, which is great, and it means there's a lot of interest and a lot of impetus behind the work. But also there was a danger, I think, that apprenticeships were going to be the answer to every single challenge that came up in government, whatever it might be, and that's a challenge too. So the fact that we were so much in the spotlight let us do some cool things. So I remember we went on a bit of a quest to find the 2 millionth apprentice, because there was a goal of 2 million apprentices, and we scoured the kind of the database, I suppose, of when apprentices started, and we zoomed in and we went on this trip to Oxford, and we met this fantastic apprentice called Paige, who was working in a small engineering kind of startup near Oxford Station, and who had no idea that she was the 2 millionth apprentice. And we met her, we talked to her, and we ended up bringing her to Downing Street to meet the then PM to kind of congratulate her and obviously kind of celebrate the fact that the apprenticeships had kind of come that far. So there were definitely some great times, some challenging times as well, of course, because when things are moving that quickly and there's so much kind of pressure to deliver, particularly around numbers, you have to kind of think on your feet. And so yeah, late nights thinking about policy ideas as well, but definitely some real highlights and some fun ones that kind of made the news as well.
That's great. Thank you for that. And now with apprenticeships really in the spotlight with, big corporates like Multiverse, for example, are you excited by the direction of travel with all of those things? Do you have any concerns about the kind of, the direction on all things apprenticeships looking forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think apprenticeships are brilliant, and I think the way that they're growing, the opportunities they give to both young people and adults are really, really important. I think kind of a couple of things that are on my mind in terms of apprenticeships. One is, I think we really need to make sure that there are enough opportunities there for younger people, because all of the stats are suggesting that apprenticeships are kind of drifting towards high levels and drifting towards kind of older existing workers reskilling, which is not unimportant in the labour market, of course. But apprenticeships have traditionally been, a really important access route for young people to different paths to success and different ways to kind of achieve career goals. And if we see a continuing kind of shrinkage of particularly 16 to 18 and 18 to 25-year-old apprenticeships in favour of kind of older established workers, then I worry that they're not really going to be hitting the kind of the money in terms of where we collectively like that programme to be. So I think that's one kind of big worry. I think the other is, and as you say, it's great that they're coming to the attention of big corporates. That's wonderful. It helps to publicise the programme. It's one of the things that has really helped to create a bit of a revolution in the way that parents and young people think about apprenticeships. They're a real kind of desirable brand now, which is fantastic. But we mustn't forget that the vast majority of businesses in the UK are small businesses. And so I think really making sure that the apprenticeship system stays simple and stays accessible to small businesses who might only take one apprentice every few years, as well as the kind of big kind of milk round style corporate draws in of large numbers is really important as well. So those are the kind of couple of things on my mind in particular about apprenticeships. But yeah, I mean, they're an amazing program, and internationally we do a lot of work comparing apprenticeship systems. So it's something that we're very passionate about, and I really want to see them continue to grow, both for young people and for small businesses in particular.
That's great. Thank you. And what about UCAS? That's been publicised quite a lot recently with changes to the way the personal statement might work from next year onwards. I'm personally really excited by that. I think there are lots of reasons that's a good thing, but would love to hear your take on kind of the direction of travel for applying to universities and how that process becomes more equitable.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the two big pieces of news from UCAS have both been really encouraging. So the fact that apprenticeships are going to be kind of more visible and applicable through that portal, I think, is great news. And we've been hankering since 14 to 19 diploma days, so like 25 years ago, for like a single application process that would take in academic and vocational education. So the fact that this is a step towards that is absolutely brilliant, and I think to be applauded. I think it's also worth remembering on an equity point that a large number of apprenticeships, because they are, after all, jobs first and foremost, they never get kind of fully advertised, or they get advertised kind of not through those central portals like the apprenticeship application system. So I think we need to continue to really push on equity as well. So this is a really great step forward, but I'd love to also see growth, particularly in things like pre-apprenticeship programs that are high quality, that might offer young people who have all the talent underlying, but maybe don't quite have the polish of kind of being able to express that yet, or show those skills, the opportunity to kind of develop that. We published some research recently, the second in our joint dialogue series, and maybe we could add the link into the notes for this, which it was looking at how young people are kind of developing those employability skills in school, and the kind of key points, I guess, to take away. One is that even where teachers are really going the extra mile to share them, unless they take the time to kind of really draw out at the end of a lesson how those skills have been developed, they may not stick. But also, people need that little bit of wiring, like we all have when we go into a job interview, to show them how to describe that skill, how to talk about an example when they used it, and if they don't get that, then they won't be able to kind of share those. So I think the UCAS change on apprenticeships is absolutely to be applauded, but I think we also need to do some stuff on the supply side to support more young people from a diverse range of backgrounds to be ready and be great candidates for those apprenticeships. And in terms of the other side of the UCAS work and thinking about the kind of changes to the personal statement, I'm also really positive about this. So this docks in really nicely with the work we've been supporting for the last few years through Rethinking Assessment, where we've been thinking about different ways to really showcase young people's talent, so that yes, written exams are a part of the story, but they really mustn't be the whole story in future. They should be one of the things that we're developing in young people, alongside a portfolio of evidence that might include oral exams. It might include products they've made, projects they've worked on, references from their work experience, all coming together as part of a learner profile that would hopefully in at some point give them like a single web link that they could send to an employer or to UCAS to kind of show what they've achieved in those years, not just in school but more broadly.
That's great, thank you. Character education is sort of on the increase in terms of its focus, I think, within Ofsted guidance, as well as on the agenda for teachers, who I think, from my experience recently, are sort of reclaiming the reasons they got into teaching in the first place through more of a focus on skills, which is great. Do you think that this has to be sort of top down? Does an organization like UCAS and the universities, do they have to lead on something like this to make it top of the agenda in schools? Or do you think there's something schools can do to make this kind of a change more revolutionary, or the school sector to make this kind of a change more revolutionary?
Yeah, great question, Henry. I think it can absolutely come from both directions. So the more kind of top-down signals, the better, because it starts to kind of create an atmosphere where this becomes the norm, not the exception. But we already see loads of great schools and multi-academy trusts involved in the Rethinking Assessment movement, involved in our Deeper Learning UK movement, all working on these things already. So we've had pilots of schools looking at how to really assess and embed creativity. We've had pilots looking at schools using interdisciplinary learning. So rather than teaching individual subjects, drawing them together into kind of challenges that are based on real questions from the outside world. We're looking at stuff around democratic learning as well, but borrowing examples from schools elsewhere in the world, like Agora in the Netherlands. So there's no shortage of head teachers, leaders, and classroom teachers and tutors who are excited about this stuff, and who know it's the right thing for their students and are willing to kind of develop and kind of share models. I think the more that can be said from the top to say that this is where we want to go, the better, because it just reinforces that, and it brings us out from a kind of a group of dedicated people who know it's the right thing to do, to become actually kind of one of the norms in our education system.
That's great. From my perspective, sitting in the sort of shadow sector, almost trying to work with schools and kind of, bridging the divide between, I suppose, what provision and supply there is outside of the school system. Often it feels like teachers and school leaders they're on an oil rig that they get onto at the beginning of term and get off at the end. Do you think there's a way that from government level and from top down, schools can be encouraged and have budget released to, I suppose, maximize their chances of making revolutionary change in the provision that they offer? Because often it feels like there's a barrier there that's a sort of time and engagement commitment that's difficult, and budget seems to get in the way of everything. What do you think will move the needle on that in the next 5 years?
Yeah, I think two things. So I think if we can change up the assessment system so that what we're measuring better fits what we're talking about, that will send absolutely the right signal in this space. And I think quite small changes can make quite a big difference there. So to give an example that from a group of schools we work with in the States, they switched out just written exams as part of their graduation to a passage presentation where a student needed to showcase some artifacts of their learning, but also showcase the skills that they learnt in that project, and most importantly how they'd applied those skills in another area of their life. And they make that presentation in front of the other students, their teachers, their parents, and other people's parents. So it's like a very rigorous thing. I mean, it was beautiful seeing some examples. This one young woman who stuck in my head was talking about how in English she had kind of learned the skills needed to develop a critical argument. So that's great. That's what she might have done for an exam. But then she talked really passionately about how, as a young Latina woman in her community, others were really struggling with kind of government almost kind of attacking their families in terms of extra bills to pay, eviction notices, and she was working with a community organisation to help upskill other families for whom English wasn't a first language to be able to push back against that authority and make their case. So she kind of really passionately told us how she'd use those skills in another area of her life, and so she got like a green rating on that. Now that is lovely in itself, but what I really loved about that story was that they then showed me how in the school that small change had then had a trickle down effect all the way through that school, because teachers knew that at the end their young people would need to be giving that presentation rather than just filling in a written exam. So from the start they were starting to think about how to upskill them in those communication skills, how to prepare them for that presentation. So I guess I want to share that because I feel like even quite small changes in assessment, because they send such a strong signal, because what you measure is what you get, can kind of start to open up some of that. I think the other part would be to address the real Progress 8 and the kind of performance measures, which I don't feel are working, and they're kind of pushing schools towards a heavy workload of kind of subject material. And obviously, as I'm sure you and other listeners will be very familiar with, teachers not being able to kind of go into more detail on topics or pick up areas of passion for students or these broader skills, because there's just so much content to get through for so many exams that they just need to push on to the next topic and push on to the next topic. So we're already seeing some brave schools, places like School 21 and Big Education, where they've introduced work experience or work engagement as their inverted commas ninth GCSE, and kind of using that curriculum time and that evidence to do that. I would like to see maybe that core shrink even further, maybe a Progress 5 that just is kind of gives schools more time to then think, yes, if our ethos is all around academic rigor, maybe we kind of put extra GCSEs in those extra slots, and that's fine. If it's more around vocational preparation, maybe we introduce some vocational education earlier, pre-16, to help prepare young people for apprenticeships. If our ethos is more around kind of creativity, you get the idea. So more flexibility and more trust for those teachers, I think, could come through those two things: changing assessment and changing the kind of performance table measures.
I love that. I think flexibility and trust are the two key words to take away there. It's feels like a constant battle. That's amazing. To finish, I'd love to go back to you personally. You're executive director at Edge. You're at the helm. You're driving the wheel. There's exciting, progress and change and all sorts of things possibly on the horizon. What are you trying to achieve personally, and what's your hope for the foundation, which I know has already outlived its original intentions?
It has, and we've kind of broadened our remit a bit from our. We originally founded to kind of address this kind of vocational academic divide, which is still important to us, but we're now seeing that very much through this wider lens of how do we make education more relevant across the board in school, in college, and in university. We do lots of different work, and I'm sure we can put the web link into this, so I won't kind of give you the full elevator pitch. But I guess one area that I feel like we have started to really make a name for ourselves, and I want to continue to do that, is as a kind of convening organisation. There's so many amazing people in this sector, different organisations, academics, researchers, policymakers, that actually what we really need more than anything is kind of forums to bring them together, and almost like a directory inquiry service to kind of make sure that everyone knows what everyone else is doing, because if all of it just added up, we would be making such a collective impact. But because it's such a complex system and sector, and because there are so many players, I think too often people are doing similar work, they don't know about each other, all of this sort of stuff. So I really want to continue to play that kind of neutral role of convening. We have groups around research that bring together all the researchers, around policy, around education comms professionals. So more information on all of those on our website, and they're all open to join and free to join. So if you're not already involved and you want to find your group, find others who are doing similar things, please just let us know, because we absolutely love making those connections and then seeing all the beautiful things that happen from those relationships that develop.
Amazing. Great place to finish. Ollie, thank you. Lots of inspiring things that you've got in such a short time now. I feel like we've touched upon so much, and know that we could expand that conversation for hours if needed. So I hope everyone will listen to this and be inspired by everything that Edge is doing, led by Ollie. So thank you very much, Ollie.
Thanks, Henry. That was a pleasure.
Thank you.